Praise be to Jesus Christ, and welcome to Catholic Forum. I'm producer Alan Dunst, and on today's show we're going to do a special Catholic Forum Presents edition of a presentation hosted by the Mary Immaculate Intercessors of West Michigan, as they brought in speaker Susan Brinkmann to talk about Learn to Discern, is it Christian or New Age? I hope you'll enjoy this fascinating talk.
So in order, if we're going to effectively dialogue with people about the dangers of the New Age, we have to know what the New Age is, right? We've got to know what it is. And in practical reality, the New Age is a cultural and a religious movement that encompasses a very wide variety of beliefs and practices, all of which emphasize the self over the divine. So the self rules in the New Age. It's kind of a mishmash of beliefs. It borrows from various religions, from the occult, from paganism, because the goal of the New Age movement is to have one world religion. That's what they want. So they take a little bit from everybody so that we'll all be happy. Now, the New Age is pantheistic, meaning they believe that God is all in all. They see him as an energy force that permeates the universe, and that everything in it, rather than everything in it is God, rather than him being a personal God, which is what we believe. And because God, humans, and the universe are all one and are all interconnected, we're all divine. So you're all gods in the New Age. All we need to do is discover that and unleash that divinity, which we do by achieving enlightenment. So in the New Age, the only authority is the self. The New Age thought there's rarely any distinction between good and evil. It's only bad or good choices. So there's no real sin there. Evil doesn't have a personification. It's not personified. Or it doesn't have any existence on its own, which explains why the New Age is so readily embraces the occult. And it does. You'll see that as we go through this conference. The need for grace is rejected because the belief that humans can perfect themselves through their own efforts and the help of enlightened people who charge lots of money in order to enlighten you. Christ is seen as one among many enlightened persons. He's just another prophet. He's not divine. In New Age, humans are not the reason for creation. Instead, creation is thought to be eternal and self-sufficient. So we're nothing special. We're just one among equals with animals and plants and that. We're all on the same level. So instead of being capable of having a relationship with a personal God, New Agers believe we become absorbed by God, who is the universe. The universe is thought to have, they think it has an intelligence of its own, and that more enlightened people can channel this intelligence to other people. And that some people have access, special people. And if you just buy our book for $12.99, you'll have it. And because there's no evil, there's no sin, there's no grace, there's no need for what? Right. There's no need for Jesus. So here's a good summary of the New Age thought. It was written by a priest named Father Schwab. This is what they believe. I decide what truth is. Evil does not really exist, but bad choices do. God is not a person, but something like energy or the cosmos. We humans will eventually lose all distinction between each other and the universe as we become one. People who understand these things rightly are channels to the mind of the universe. I need to work on developing my understanding of the mind of the universe in order to better myself. This is similar to what people used to call salvation. Grace is an old idea, replaced by self-enlightenment. I'm not the reason for the world around me. There have been and will be many Christs. And these are people who understand our oneness with the cosmos. Eventually, we'll all become one in ways of thinking. Separation and distinctions are generally bad and will be replaced by oneness. That is New Age thought in one paragraph, which I think was brilliant of Father Schwab. It really was. So in order to win people over to the New Age way of thinking, which is a very distorted worldview, one of the most important steps is to change the way you think. The Judeo-Christian worldview has got to go. This is the goal of the human potential movement. It's the goal of all of these self-help programs that you're seeing on here now. Rhonda Byrne's There's the Secret, Helen Schucman's A Course in Miracles, Hubbard's Dianetics, Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, that's just one of his titles, The Law of Attraction by Esther and Jerry Hicks, and I'm going to tell you later where that came from, and you're not going to believe it, but it's true. These books are all about transforming you and teaching you a new way of thinking in order to help you achieve your maximum human potential. Okay, that's what it's about. And every year, it's the same self-help message that comes out, but in new packages. That's where you're going to have to learn to discern how to tell the difference between a good self-help program and a bad one. But they all of the New Age ones promise this transformation of consciousness, this spiritual awakening. Or they insist that every human being has the ability to transform any weakness or suffering into strength, power, perfect peace, health, and abundance. This is the secret of life. So they're all part and parcel of this. This is a decades-old New Age movement known as the Human Potential Movement. That's what it's referred to as more theologically. It includes all of these motivational training programs, self-help books, and as I said, they all promote that human-centered psychology. It's always about you. It's based on the belief that you are in complete control of your destiny. You don't need God, you don't need His will, you don't need His help. You're in control of it. Now, you have to be careful because in that movement, they often use Christian terminology, but don't be fooled because in this human potential movement, the mind is God. And remember, you're divine inside, you're just trying to discover it. And you can create your own reality just by changing your thought processes, okay, by the way you think. And a perfect example of how dangerous this movement can be is found in the book A Course in Miracles, also known as the New Age Bible. That's what it's known as in the field where people research it. And what the Course is designed to do is to change the way you think. Here's the introduction to the Course, which I got right out of the intro to it. The purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everything and everyone in the world. For example, this new way of thinking involves believing that we all live in heaven with God. We're already there. And that our lives on earth, this is all just a bad dream. And all we have to do is wake up. There's no such thing as sin, suffering, guilt, death, judgment. And we need to be rid of all those ideas and concepts because they stand in the way of realizing our true divine nature. So you got to get rid of all that stuff. So in order to do that, of course, you got to develop this new attitude, and this is what the Course attempts to accomplish over the course of a year. It's a year-long course. And these are the attitudes. The rejection of biblical understanding about issues such as sin, guilt, and atonement, and the acceptance of New Age occult teachings such as pantheism, all is God and God is all, and psychic development. Psychic development is very big in the New Age. So people who take the Course are put through a kind of systematic brainwashing, in which they're called upon to repeat statements. This is how it works. Every day they give you a statement, you have to repeat it. And it starts out innocently with something like, nothing I see in this room means anything. And you say it over and over and over for a few minutes in the morning and at night. You say, nothing in this room means anything. Nothing in this room means anything, over and over. And although it might sound silly, and like, what's so bad about that? By lesson 96, students are being taught that salvation comes from myself. Lesson 303, the Holy Christ is born in me today. So you can see how it definitely goes off the rails. It starts out very innocently and you're getting sucked into it now. And by the time you get to 96, you're sold on this program, so you're going to go through it the whole way. So just like so many other self-help books that we consume by the millions every year, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry in search of this better life, more money, the love of our dreams, instant success. Course in Miracles is really the Bible of them all. That's where they start. But another example, of course, would be Rhonda Byrne. I've already mentioned her. It's a secret. Multi-millionaire. She built her personal fortune on repackaging what is probably one of the oldest heresies in the church, which is Gnosticism. And that's the belief that there's some sort of special knowledge out there that you can be saved through this knowledge, and that certain people have access to it. And in her case, you just pay her and she'll help you with it. So that heresy really can be traced back to the earliest days of the church. It's in a variety of sects that taught that all kinds of these novel beliefs about God and the world, such as Manichaeism. Those adherents, they believe that salvation is the truth through knowledge rather than through Jesus. Byrne puts her own spin on it. You are a magnet attracting to you all things via the signal you are emitting through your thoughts and feelings. I mean, is there any proof that there's a signal that's emitted through our thoughts? No. But she claims that if you use them, you become a powerful magnet for personal wealth. If it would only be that simple. This is all a throwback to the 19th century movement, really known as the New Thought movement. That's where it all comes from, which taught that what the mind can conceive, a person can achieve. So realizing one's true potential, this is the bedrock of all of these, change the way you think books. Wayne Dyer, The Power of Intention. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's what he says. No, Wayne, that doesn't happen. Your mind doesn't have that power. It can't do that. Deepak Chopra, he's totally sold on the idea that the mind is the master of matter. Just in case you're wondering, why is it so bad, Sue, if we have good thoughts and keep good thoughts in our minds? Well, it isn't. There's nothing wrong with that. And we should always be careful not to allow ourselves to be burdened by oppressive, negative, and bad thoughts. I mean, isn't this what we read in Philippians? Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. You can do that. You can definitely do that. Keep your mind clear, but you can't cross the line between thinking that those positive thoughts have a kind of power that they don't have. That's crossing the line. Yes, it can make you feel better about life. It can even influence your choices in life and the things that you do, but it can't change reality the way these gurus are teaching us. And I want to just point out, too, before I move on, that it's important to know these techniques are not just confined to the books that are out there, self-help books. They are very prevalent in management training programs. Management training programs have very much bought into this New Age stuff. And although many of those programs are supposedly used for normal, economic reasons and, to build team training and that sort of stuff, The pontifical document, Jesus Christ, the bearer of the water of life, warns about these programs. In reality, company employees can find themselves being submitted to an alien spirituality in a situation which raises questions about personal freedom. So that's very dangerous because the seminars, they're very subtle, and they mix in with this helpful advice. They're always advertised as methods to improve your motivation and your workplace performance and your leadership skills, but many of them actually have cult techniques worked into them. So it's obvious just how much the self is so unnaturally glorified in everything associated with the human potential movement, which is why the Vatican document, Jesus Christ, the bearer of the water of life, the human potential movement is the clearest example of the conviction that humans are divine or contain a divine spark within themselves. So how do you know if a self-help book, a speaker, or a seminar is New Age? How do you know that? Well, here's some of the keys. The mind is God, and that's going to be easy to spot. The mind is God. The key to success is just focus on what you desire and it will be yours. No, it doesn't really work that way, unfortunately. They claim to have secret knowledge, like Rhonda Byrne. There's another one, J.Z. Knight, other mediums who claim to be channeling archangels or avatars or ascended masters. The presence of the occult, if there's ever a medium involved, a clairvoyant, any kind of reliance on a spirit guide, that's the presence of the occult. They exhibit signs of being occult, and I just reviewed a couple of them. That's that great secrecy that surrounds the material, telling you that anyone who opposes you is evil or stupid. And they always, always, always ask you to sign a hold harmless agreement so that if you do have a psychotic break, you can't sue them. Very, very careful. Be very, very careful about that. But once you have changed the way you are thinking, now you need to achieve enlightenment. You've got to enhance now this new knowledge of yourself and this new worldview. And the most common way we know that they go about this is through Eastern-style meditation techniques. You know, all those prayer fads from transcendental meditation, centering prayer, to mindfulness and body scan meditation and yoga. These are some of the most prevalent ways that they use. And I'm saying Eastern here deliberately because what most people are not aware of is that the word meditation has different meanings depending on where you are. If you're in the West, such as here, when you hear the word meditation, what's the first thing you think of? Anybody? Prayer, right. Well, in the East, it means a mental exercise. They use it for a different purpose. They don't use meditation to pray. They use meditation to go in and discover their divinity. That's their road to enlightenment. And the explicit goal of Eastern meditation is to induce an altered state of consciousness. That's what they're trying to do. And which one is, better able to connect with that inner divinity or become more firmly affixed in the present moment. That's another one. That's in mindfulness. So it has nothing to do really with prayer as we know it. And the reason the New Age embraces the East so readily is because they have something very fundamental in common, is that they're both pantheistic. They both believe that God is all in all and that he manifests himself as a life force or an energy. He's not a person. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So the two go together very handily. And although it would be accurate to say practices such as yoga or transcendental meditation or New Age, they're really not. They're Hindu, but their belief systems are widely embraced by the New Age. And this is why the Vatican document, Jesus Christ, the Bearer of the Word of Life, warns about those associations in there. So what exactly is this altered state? And it's something that you really need to understand because it will prevent you from getting involved in these Eastern methods. An altered state of consciousness occurs whenever there is a temporary change in your normal mental state. Now that can happen for a variety of reasons. When you go to sleep at night, okay? It can happen from an illness, oxygen deprivation, from drugs. There's drugs you can take that can do that. A coma. Probably one of the most common and best known, hypnosis. Hypnosis is not against the church, okay? The church has only issued a warning about hypnosis. She has condemned only abuses, meaning the stage, and is leaving the way free for scientific research. So she has not really condemned it. Only when it's used in a morally, in an evil way, okay? And for good reason. She does have those warnings there for good reason because the list of possible negative post-hypnotic reactions, it's too long to discuss here. I'm just putting some of them up here. Look at what some of them are. All these conditions occur because you're putting yourself into the altered state and it makes you very susceptible, as we know from hypnosis, to suggestion. And that suggestion doesn't necessarily have to come from a doctor or the person in the room. It can come from other spiritual entities. And that's what Dr. John Ankerberg teaches. He says, altered states can open a person to the supernatural realm and contact with spirits who are really demons. No one can logically deny the legitimate connection exists between altered states of consciousness and spirit influence or spirit possession. And in fact, encountering entities is actually quite common in an altered state. And those entities, of course, want to gain control over you while your will is down. And that's what they wait. They wait for you to get into that altered state, either through hypnosis or through one of these Eastern prayer practices. Many, many cases, I will tell you this as a researcher in this, of attempted or successful possession, actual outright possession, is in the literature on these practices, spiritualism. But in the West, we often pass off these symptoms of possession as hallucinations, and we just say, oh no, it's nothing, and then these people have terribly oppressed lives, and nobody really knows how to help them. And your susceptibility it's not contingent upon whether or not you're mentally unstable or sick. or even on drugs. It can happen to anybody who enters that region of consciousness for whatever reason. So what are some of the tactics used in Eastern meditation to bring about an altered state? Well, repeating a mantra is one of the most common. Then you focus on your breathing. That's another very popular way. You focus on your breathing and you can start to get yourself really into this calm state. Certain body postures or movements, if held and with the right breathing, you can do that. All of these things have the intention of blanking the mind, okay? You want to get into this altered state where all your thoughts, you forget about the world, everything just goes blank. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at the granddaddy of all these practices of Eastern meditation, designed to alter your consciousness, and that is transcendental meditation. And once you understand this one, you're going to understand all of them, because they all come off of this, okay? Proponents of TM describe it as a simple, natural, effortless procedure practiced 20 minutes twice a day while sitting comfortably with the eyes closed. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? Simple, natural, effortless, just sit quietly with your eyes closed. Now, during this 20-minute exercise, the person uses their mantra, which is a word or sound given to a person during the personal interview stage or the initiation into TM. You have to be initiated into TM. This word is usually the name of a Hindu god, and it has to be kept secret. That's a very, very secret thing, and they're very, very strict about that. You're never supposed to speak about that aloud. And it is used during prayer to blank the mind. That's what you want to do, get rid of all your thoughts. And it serves as a kind of conduit to instill this deep, deep state of concentration. So proponents believe that employing this technique allows your mind to settle inwardly, to settle inward beyond thought, to experience the source of thought, pure awareness, also known as transcendental consciousness. This is the most silent and peaceful level of consciousness, your innermost self. So the constant repetition of a mantra is, as you know, also a form of self-hypnosis. It's like, the hypnotists are, the way they use that, and you're getting sleepy, you're getting sleepy. So it makes use of that mantra over and over again to focus the mind while striving the will to go deeper within itself. And the effects are a hypnotic-like state. So you're essentially hypnotizing yourself. Concentration upon one thing, disengagement from other stimuli, a high degree of openness to suggestion, a psychological and physiological condition that externally resembles sleep, but in which consciousness is interiorized and the mind is subject to suggestion. That's Father John Dreher. The dangers of dabbling in this kind of altered states of mind induced by TM and practices like that, they cannot be understated. And the Irish Theological Commission explains this in a 1994 book, Catholic Response to the New Age Phenomena. It's very, very good. The danger that is not pointed out is that in this state of so-called cosmic consciousness, people are open to spirit influences without being in control, for they have surrendered to this consciousness. So anyone who wants to read a little bit more about what can happen to you about getting involved in transcendental meditation needs to look up on the internet. Just Google the name Father Bill Niemiller, K-N-E-E-M-I-L-L-E-R, of the Diocese of Davenport, Iowa, and he gives his testimony of what happened to him after dabbling around in transcendental meditation and how he needed to be delivered. And two of the most experienced exorcists in the world had to work on him to get rid of these spirits that he was innocently calling on and using as a mantra. And I take my hat off to him because he really came out and just told it like it was and was scary. Now we're going to get into a really popular offshoot of TM, which is centering prayer. And it employs the same mind-emptying techniques as TM, but it substitutes Christian words for the mantras. Now, proponents' literature, which they change every 6 months, depending on what the criticism is, proponents' literature says that this method of prayer is used to prepare the faculties to receive the gift of contemplative prayer. Now, at first glance, there's nothing wrong with that. And there isn't if you use centering prayer just to quiet yourself down to get ready for prayer, okay? But if you're just sitting there for 20 minutes trying to blank your mind, you're not praying. No discussion, you're not praying. That's called an erroneous notion of prayer, 2726 in the Catechism. But let's first look at the history so you can see where centering prayer comes from. Began in the late 60s at the height of the transcendental meditation craze. I don't know how many people here are not, oh, this looks like a young crowd. I don't think you remember. George Harrison, yeah. Remember that? Ravi Shankar. St. Joseph's Abbey up in Spencer, Massachusetts, there was a group of Trappist abbots up there, one of them named Thomas Keating, and they were exploring this era of interreligious dialogue that followed Vatican II. Between the years of 61 and 81, so it's a 20-year period, they held dialogues with Buddhist and Hindu representatives, a Zen master who used to give a week-long retreats to the monks once or twice a year. He did that for 9 years. And then a former Trappist monk who actually became a transcendental meditation teacher, actually quit the church, and he also gave sessions to the monks there. So that's kind of where this all started. And after exploring all these other traditions, Keating asked his monks, he said, you know, why don't we try to devise a way, because Westerner and Christians are getting so interested in this Eastern stuff, why don't we try to come up with something that we could, you know, sort of package with, take the East and package it a little bit with Christian from the West and make it more palatable to them so we can bring them back. Which is not, I mean, that's a good motive. There's nothing wrong with that. So he suggested they put the Christian tradition in the form that might appeal to people, but take from the Eastern. And that's how centering prayer was born. That's essentially where it came from. And that's from Thomas Keating's own writing. Okay. Now, the method most widely used today was, of course, developed by Keating, by Father William Meninger, and Basil Bennington in that abbey, St. Joseph's Abbey. That's where it came from. Now, the marks of both Eastern and Western influence in centering prayer are actually very easy to spot. You don't have to be, you know, a well-rounded researcher to see this. In centering prayer, a person chooses a sacred word, and they use that, or a mantra. They don't call it a mantra, though. They call it a sacred word. But it's used for the same purpose. Whenever a thought or an inspiration comes to mind, what they do is they try to make it go away. And you make it go away by repeating that sound. Something like how the Jesus prayer was. In some of the early days of the church, we had the Jesus prayer, and we would do that. But that was just really to recollect and quiet yourself down. You're not supposed to stay there and be in that blank state forever. That's not what the prayer session is. It's just to get ready to pray. So it's supposed to help you to achieve this inner quiet that they say can serve as a prelude to contemplation. And again, the method is used 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. So it's very similar to TM. Both TM and centering prayer claim that you're going to pick up vibrations during this meditation. You're going to teach one, you know, how to achieve an altered level of consciousness. They also share a common goal of finding one's God center. Okay, so just because, though, and I want to point this out, that it adopts from Hindu or Buddhist practices doesn't make it wrong. All right, because we can adopt what is good from other religions. And Joseph Ratzinger said that in 1989. However, that's only so long as the Christian conception of prayer, its logic and requirements are never obscured. Herein lies the rub. That's the rub right there. It's not possible to incorporate techniques from other religions that are radically at odds with the purpose and goal of authentic Christian meditation, which is to dialogue with God.